there's still a section of the boxing fraternity that wants to have this debate about Daniel Dubois and what he represents and what he had happened to him previously that might happen to him again. And we had an example of this with Tony Bellew last week talking about Dubois, which then got him into a bit of a confrontation or a debate remotely with Frank Warren. Let's have a listen to what Tony said last week.
The first time you say no mas, or the first time you say I can't fight no more, is the hardest in your life.
Yeah.
So when you're in that ring, the first time you stop or the first time you quit, it's the hardest.
Yeah.
Once you've done it once, it only gets easier from there on in. But once he starts getting back to that place where this is really, really hard, where Usyk's going to take him like he takes everybody else, he's got that in him. Yeah. And as a fighter, you can never show that. At some point in our careers, we've all hit a point where we go, I might have had enough here. But we're trying to fight our way through it.
What I'm upset about, I was upset the last fight when he said, when we made the match between him and AJ, where he said he'll wind up on a stretcher in an ambulance, which I thought was, from an ex-fighter, was not really... You can say they get beat. Everyone's got an opinion who's going to win, but to make a comment like that, I thought was pretty disgusting. And he's just got a downer on him. That's up to him. If he don't like him, he don't like him. And I was asked a question, and all I do is respond to what I'm asked. I never brought it up. I was asked, and I just said he's a bit of a jerk, and he doesn't like him, and that's the end of it.
All right, let's put aside the back and forward between Frank and Tony. I mean, there was this... I always remember the observations that Tyson Fury, a young Tyson Fury, made to David Haye about if you swallowed it once, you'll swallow it again alongside you'll swallow your teeth next, and how he could beat him in a race, and Usain Bolt wasn't necessarily a person he needed to beat in a race. Is there any validity in what Tony's saying? I mean, Tony's been in with Usyk. He knows the space that Usyk's going to take Daniel Dubois into, which is, with all due respect, and correct me if you think I'm wrong and where I'm going with this, Jarrell Miller is a lot easier to hit than Usyk. Filip Hrgovic is a lot easier to hit than Usyk. Anthony Joshua is a lot easier to hit than Alexander Usyk. But is there any validity, given that Bellew's been in with Alexander Usyk and knows that Usyk's going to make Daniel work and he's going to make him work and they're going to take him into the fight unless Daniel can get him out early and clean him out early, that's going to take Daniel to a place that might remind him of something, energy-wise, fatigue-wise, mental stability-wise, in terms of what Usyk does to fighters, like he did to Tyson Fury, which is told him what he was going to do to Tyson Fury. I'm never going to leave you alone. I'm never going to leave you alone. And he did it. Tyson Fury is a better boxer than Daniel Dubois. Is there any validity in this observation?
I think that the word swallowed it is a strong word. You know, when you look at Daniel Dubois and his defeats in the past and you talk about that first Joe Joyce defeat, you go, when he went down there and people go, no, he swallowed it. No, he didn't swallow it. You've got a broken eye socket.
He got dropped by a jab,
but he had a broken eye socket. When he boxed Usyk, against Usyk, when he got dropped by the jag, he blew a gasket then. He'd done everything. He'd thrown everything in, trying to get Usyk after he'd hurt him with the legitimate body shot that was called a low blow, by the way, just saying. And you go... Look, Daniel at the moment is the most dangerous heavyweight out there right now for Alexander Usyk, and I don't think it's a case of if they get back into old waters and he go there, does Daniel then...
But he didn't get stopped by Usyk, did he? He himself stopped himself.
Well, he had nothing left.
So isn't that an element? Listen, I'm a Daniel Dubois fan. No. I want Daniel Dubois to win this fight, and despite the fact
I just think swallowed it's a strong word. I think that swallowed it's a strong word because I think that all fighters are, are gladiators.
But what is it?
He's had enough. He had enough. Okay. He didn't swallow it. But I think that he had punched himself out. Inexperience,
isn't that
Simon.
potato?
No, hold a minute. Inexperience played a part of that, right? That's where it was with him. From the Alexander Usyk fight, is this a fair assessment? Is
he a different animal now?
From the Alexander Usyk fight, that was the fight that moulded Daniel Dubois, and he kicked on from then.
Agreed.
So this is a different fight to the first one they had.
Listen, I was with Joe Joyce when he.
Well, that's what I'm going to ask you because I was at that fight as well.
Yeah, you sat right behind me, I remember, and no one gave Joe a prep. But listen, Daniel Dubois had a lot of pressure on him because when he turned pro, he was like, this is Mike Tyson. He won Prospect of the Year, same as Atam has done now.
Triple D, the next big thing.
Triple D, the next big thing. And I said, I'm not saying, but I said to Frank Warren after the fight, he'll be a world champion if he gets his mind right. Because I think it was all between the ears with Daniel Dubois. All between the ears. And like what you've just said there, whether he did give up or quit, whatever people want to call it, I genuinely think, I'm not just getting out of it, it's irrelevant now because after that Usyk fight, you saw something clicked in the Miller fight. And as you say, a lot easier to hit than Usyk, a lot easier to hit. Then he moved. And you look, right now, Daniel Dubois is the in-form heavyweight. And the only reason I'm not picking him to win is because I've picked Usyk to lose 4 times and I've looked like an idiot. So I'm not doing it again. But I would love nothing more. But I would love nothing more to see Daniel Dubois get his moment against Usyk because I think he deserves it, and I think he's a tremendous heavyweight.
Let me rephrase it. Would you be surprised if Daniel Dubois won?
No.
There you go.
No, me either. But again, I'll go back to the point.
But just to let everybody know, the viewers know, that I'm not picking that to happen because that'll be the 5th time.
I want to. Oh, you should go with what you believe with rather than going with popular consensus of what people say about you. But the fact is that irrespective, and I am, as you know, I'm picking Daniel to win this fight, and I don't care whether I'm right or wrong. I care because I want Daniel to win, but I don't care if the public opinion is you got it wrong again, Jordan, because it's irrelevant. Yeah. Make your decision and at least own it, right? Done. But the fact is that it is unarguable that despite what we make the case, that he's a different fighter. And he is a different fighter because he's got a world strap now. Yeah. Right? And he walked into an arena with 96,000 people that were anointing Anthony Joshua. He was there to make up the fight.
He was the gazelle.
Right, exactly. But he is still going to go back into a fight where no one is going to do. There's no deterioration in Usyk unless it goes old overnight, and we haven't seen it happen. Right? There's no deterioration in Usyk. He's still going to go into a fight where the one person that's capable of taking him to a place where mentally he's not able to cope with is Usyk.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And it's not. And the questions have not been answered by Jarrell Miller. They've not been answered by Hrgovic, and they've not been answered by Dubois. We know he can take punishment. We know that he's got the guts to bite down on his gum shield. But when you've got somebody as clever and as creative as Usyk, that did to Bellew what he did to Bellew, that did to Dubois what he did to Dubois, that did to Tyson Fury, took him into a place that they didn't think they could be taken to, and then it's the mental breakdown. And I suppose the only way we're going to know is when it comes on top this time round.
I think
he's a new man. I think he's a new man.
Listen, I think it's fair to say that Daniel Dubois is a massively improved fighter since their first fight. Is Alexander Usyk improved since their first fight, or has he aged slightly more since the first fight? We have seen no signs of that. But what I'm saying is, it makes it far more interesting.
Talking about single punch digs and fighters that are capable of invoking those, the potential fight in the light heavyweights, which by the way is a great division, between Callum Smith and Anthony Yarde. We had Tundi, Anthony Yarde's manager, on the other day. Before I get into the the mechanics of that fight, let's have a listen to the conversation between myself and Tundi last week.
For you to make such a statement, who has Callum Smith fought and beat of a level where you can say they are world-class fighters? Because guess what?
Tundi, put it back to you then. Put it back to you then about Anthony. Who's Anthony beat?
Lyndon Arthur fought Bivol and lost on points. Bivol is now the undisputed champion.
But Tundi,
we fought Beterbiev. We lost in a fight a year. Beterbiev was the undisputed champion.
Same argument.
Callum Smith has fought both guys and never even looked like he won a round. So how have you managed to say that he's in a better position, a better place than Anthony Yarde? When in truth,
I think he's the better fighter.
Callum Smith has only ever beaten a fighter like George Grove, a British fighter, at the end of his career. Was Anthony Yarde competitive against Kovalev? Yes, he was.
Yeah,
he almost stopped him in the 8th round.
Right, there was a lot more to that conversation about duckers. You know, Tundi alluded to the fact that he was now suggesting that Callum Smith had ducked Anthony Yarde. He was alluding to the fact that Josh Boazzi had ducked Anthony Yarde. Now, I know that not to be the case. I know that not to be the case because I was there involved in the discussions when the fight was being made, preferably contractually with Anthony Yarde, and it had to be Willie Hutchinson to keep Josh Boazzi comfortable with his current promoter, and he didn't want Hutchinson, he wanted Anthony Yarde. I also know that Anthony Yarde was in dispute with Frank Warren at the time, so I think it's a bit strong. But when you listen to some of that conversation, what do you both take away from the observations about who has Callum Smith fought? And what is the observation based upon that he can beat Anthony Yarde?
That's crazy. You can't say who was Callum Smith beat. You know, when he won the Ali Trophy, you know, the World
George
Boxing
Groves
Super Series.
He will say George Groves at the end of his career.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. He beat George Groves, you know, and you look at that and you just go, look, he's been competing at world level for a long time, Callum Smith, and you've got to give him his props and you've got to pay him his respects. And going into that fight, as I said Sunday, Callum Smith would start the favourite going off the back of that last victory. You know, when you look at that against Joshua Boazzi, you go, he performed and he rolled back the years. And if you look at Anthony Yarde's last performances, and he's a fighter I love, by the way, Anthony Yarde, and I do believe that if he doesn't win a world title, he would have underachieved. But you go, in the last couple of fights, we haven't seen nothing to suggest that he would start favourite against a former champion in Callum Smith. Great fight, by the way, but I think there's some of the comments that Tunde was making there were quite insane in many ways.
Look,
quite absurd.
First of all, Anthony Yarde is one of the best promoted fighters in British boxing in recent memory, because Frank Warren got him to a world title shot after beating, let's be honest, nobody could. I can't. Can you tell? Yeah, he got to Kovalev. Kovalev was past his best. But Anthony is a great fighter. And by the way, I am a really big fan of Anthony.
I'm a massive fan.
Him as a person as well. But comparing his career to Callum Smith is like Benidorm to Marbella. Callum Smith, it is. Come on, it's a fact. Like Callum Smith is a proven world-class fighter. And he's fell short at the elite level. But Anthony Yarde, I think Anthony Yarde can win a world title. I do. I think he can win a world title.
I think he had a great chance against Kovalev.
Yeah,
I mean, he had a great chance in that first fight.
Yeah, it was inexperience that lost him that fight.
And against Beterbiev as well, let's have it right, that was one of the fights of the year. I mean, the performance he put up.
But that's what Anthony can do.
Agreed.
Yeah, he can fight. On his day, he can fight, and it's a great fight. But I think that, some of the comments from Tunde there were quite strong.
Tunde's passionate, though, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's defending his guy.
And he's in the business of representing. I mean, people would suggest that somewhere along the line that maybe Tunde hasn't helped Anthony Yarde's career. Other people might be more prone with suggesting that he has. It depends upon what point of view. I think that Tunde was trying to dominate the conversation, which is a bit ironic given the person on the end of it was me. So I get on with it. I do it to other people, so I get it back. But do you think it's fair for me? I mean, I think Callum Smith is a better fighter. I saw Paul Smith's reaction to it, and we'll talk to Paul about it directly himself, but he wasn't particularly impressed with Tunde's observations. Do you think... my observation, Callum Smith, who was, started at super middleweight, now at light heavyweights. Anthony Yarde is a bona fide, fully fledged, always has been light heavyweight, right, in his professional career. Obviously, Callum's now stepped up in the latter parts of his career, was a super middleweight when he was a world champion and fought and lost only to Canelo Alvarez. Beats John Wilder, went on to have decent fights against Canelo. Am I right to suggest, or am I completely out of order, to suggest that Callum Smith is, in fact, the better fighter of the two?
No, he's proven. Yeah, because he is proven. And like I say to you, going off that fight against Joshua Buatsi, who's a great fighter as well, and he showed that he still has a lot left in the tank. Boxing IQ was there, the grit,
desire,
the fight.
everything.
I never felt that. I always thought that Buatsi was going to maybe win that fight, because I thought when it gets tough, you're going to question, what desire has Callum Smith got left there? Well, he proved us wrong, and he showed that he's got a lot left there, and that's why you go, at this stage, going in, look, it's for Anthony Yarde to prove us wrong.
Absolutely.
But Callum Smith will start the favourite going into that one.
But deservedly so, though. Deservedly
that's
so.
What I'm saying.
Absolutely right.
On merit.
Listen, like I say, Anthony Yarde, I've always thought, I want him to be a bit more active as well. And I think that, given the opportunity in the right fight, Anthony Yarde can win a world title. I'm not saying he can't beat Callum Smith, but we have to go on credentials here. And after his last display against Joshua Buatsi, Callum Smith is a proven world-class fighter. And Anthony Yarde has competed at the world level, but he hasn't got a world-class win.
Of course, Tunde and Anthony will say that actually only goes to prove that Josh Buatsi wasn't as good as you all lot think he was.
Josh Buatsi is a brilliant fighter.
Yeah, I think so too.
He's a brilliant fighter.
We'll get Paul Smith in to have his right to reply, which I'm sure he will next week when he comes on, or whenever he's coming on next.